Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Stan.
Hello and greetings.
And we're continuing with our medieval cinema podcast today. The episode starts off with Jack Jackson, dans la France, in the midst of studying under Sugal. And this is not accurate to the book, because in the book, Jack travels to Spain, where he essentially learns from, the people there, and I think at one point travels into Muslim Spain. Kind of not really demonstrating the same sort of religious fervor that Philip or Tom would have felt. I'm just wryly commenting on that. That said, he ends up befriending, I think, a Muslim couple and almost ends up marrying a young Muslim girl who's actually very, very kind and whatnot, and who does genuinely love him. Like, you really grow to feel sorry for her. That said, Jack ends up leaving because he turns down her hand in marriage because he wants to build cathedrals, and he can't forget Aliana. And he ends up in, I think, Compostela at one point, and then travels back to France, to Saint Denis, where, well, by then him and Aliana are together, and they see Sugal, as well as Aliénor d'Aquitaine, or Eleanor of Aquitaine, Louis VI, that is to say, Louis VI, the pious father of... No, I think it'd be Louis VII. Yeah, it's Louis VII. Whoops. Freudian slip. Louis VI is the Glorieux, that is to say, the glorious. He's also known as the Gras, because he was a little plump. And his son was a pious man, I think Le Pieux. One could surname him that. And it was Louis VII who was to father Philippe Auguste. Philippe Augustus. Because Auguste was truly impressive. He, in some ways, was the nation-building king of France. In some ways. In a lot of ways, France would not have national consciousness in her mind until the hammering by the English in the 100 Years' War. That aside, Jack, though, runs into Sugal in this depiction. And Sugal speaks English, which is just bewildering because historically he would not have known any English whatsoever. He might have only known French, Latin, and maybe Greek. And this would have been the norm. He might have known a bit of maybe German, but English would have been totally useless to him because, when would he use it? Why would he use it? Because, at the time, England was essentially a third world country, which just happened to be next door to France. And there was no real contact between the two native peoples of England and France. Now, years and years later, a few centuries later actually, there'd be more contact between France and Scotland, weirdly. That said, most of the contact between the two countries was between merchants, some monks, yes, and the nobility. But the thing is, everybody would have been speaking French, not English. Sadly for the English people. Or I should say the Anglo-Saxon people. Well, they're still Anglo-Saxon today, but you know what I mean. That aside, Philippe, though, meanwhile, has become a broken man. Waylarn approaches him and tempts him in his hour of darkness, his time in the desert, as it is called by Philippe. Philippe later rejects Waylarn and breaks up with him, and Waylarn takes it well. The French translation would be te maudit. I can't say it in English because YouTube. But if you understand French, you'll understand that. And if you don't, well, you're darned. A less polite version of that. And Jack decides to go back, stealing Sugal's book of mathematics and geometry. Dirty little thief. No, I genuinely think, Jack had no right to that book.
I agree.
In my younger days, I used to think, oh, well, whatever. But now I'm like, dude, you stole his rock, and because you stole the rock that cries, and the book. Now, in the novel, Jack doesn't steal any geometry book from anyone. He learns geometry from, I think in Spain, from Muslims, Jews, and Christians there, having traveled amongst all the builders of all three cultures, which is pretty cool. But here, the show did get one thing right. Sugal, I think, was the builder and designer of Notre Dame de Saint-Denis and de Paris, and that is actually an impressive accomplishment of Sugal's. Sugal was just one of the most incredible men in the history of France. It's just, like, seriously, people look him up. He was an incredible person. The power behind the throne at one point, a great master builder, a propagandist, a incredible historian for his age. He was apparently a skilled, he was just skilled in so many fields, and just he was the beating heart of France at one point, and it's just incredible. And he was a good counterbalance to Lionel d'Aquitaine's influence at court. That said, maybe Sugal started to exert a little too much later on, but just an incredible individual. There's not enough praise that can be heaped at Sugal's doorstep.
A very underrated figure.
Yes. Sadly, historians don't always like him these days, but some do. Jim Bradbury, for example, really likes him, but does say there might be too much praise laid at his door in some circles. I don't think so, but Jim Bradbury tries to be more balanced, but still heaps praise on Sugal. Read his book if you're Les Capetiens, the Capetians, I think it'd be called in English. He goes into detail on all the Capetiens. That aside, Jack returns to England with his Madonna, a statue he carves after Aliena and his son, Tom. He meets his family, continues over to England, and takes over as master builder. Has a stick measuring contest with Alfred. And, of course, it's found out that William plans to attack the town while an assassin will kill Jack. They fend off William after consulting with Richard. And, of course, you have Cuthbert, who ends up being the would-be assassin, and he wanted his sister, reburied on Holy Land. The trouble is, Richard stabs through a curtain unthinkingly, realizing it's a monk, but probably thinking it's Remigius, which just goes to show Richard's typical bloodthirstiness. When there was no need to kill the assassin, you could have captured him. That said, Cuthbert dies in Philip's arms. Philip becomes prior again, and Remigius leaves after cursing Philip. Now let's rate this episode. This episode does compress so much. Oh, and by the way, Robert of Gloucester dies in this episode, so I just almost forgot that detail.
And William kills his mother.
Oh yeah, there's also that. Yeah, both scenes are pretty shocking and important in the grand scheme of things. So let's rate this.
I would have liked to have seen a lot of the Skip story arc.
Yeah.
I want to see more of Jack in France.
Yeah, although he doesn't spend much time there in the novel. It's mostly in Spain.
Yes, but the least they could have done, if they were to compress it, take aspects of his Spanish story arc.
Although it would mean Jack would get another love interest. We can't have that.
Well,
but I'll rate it a 2.1.
2.5. There's a lot of good that I like.
You just want more.
Yeah, there was missed opportunities.
Yeah, but it's overall a pretty good episode. It's above average. It's above average. Anyways, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button to stay tuned for more.